Hello there and welcome to the Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley. My name is Draxter Dupre. This is, in fact, the last show before we go on our summer break. And, of course, Joe is not with us again. For crying out loud, she's building the Second Life birthday exhibit from 1920s Berlin. We're going to do a special show next Friday from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Second Life time, live in Second Life at SL13B, the greatest display of user-empowered creativity in the digital realm that I personally know of. So you got to come down. We'll have fabulous guests from other VR places, people who have never been in Second Life, noobs, who have a lot to say about virtual worlds and virtual reality. And then we'll have Second Life experts as well and creatives. But as usual, I'm getting ahead of myself. On today's show, as the title suggests, leftovers, but very good ones. Leftovers sometimes is a term that is not very positive, but this one is because I recorded lots and lots of conversations at the Silicon Valley Virtual Reality Conference and Expo in April, and I still have audio with major players in that industry. Kirill Pokuty, among other people on this show, who has been to Chernobyl, the site of the nuclear power plant failure in April 1986, April 26, 1986, something that impacted me personally quite a bit. Then we have Timony West from Unity, Gunter S. Thompson, who's in court with the estate of Hunter S. Thompson. No, he isn't. From Gunter's Universe, a VR talk show. We also have Monica Joe, who was married in VR. Before we start rolling the tape, usually I do the pitch of support us, guys, help us out with a voluntary subscription or with with getting a banner on the site, a sponsorship, a corporate sponsorship if you have a Second Life business. Today, please show your support for the victims of the shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida. Casper Warden in Second Life has put up a donation operation, and they have already collected over 500,000 Linden dollars. And although on this show we rarely go political, I want to make a quick statement about what happened in Florida, which has nothing to do with virtual reality or Second Life. America has to do some soul searching in terms of the availability of guns, pure and simple. There's hate out there. There is confusion out there. There are people who are mentally unstable. We cannot eradicate that to 100%. We cannot police our way out of the fact that we have people among us who are A, hateful, or B, mentally disturbed, or both, who willy-nilly pledge allegiance to all sorts of people who they don't even know what they do. I mean, this guy pledged allegiance to Hezbollah and ISIS at the same time, which is bizarre. We had a mentally disturbed person who had hate for the LGBTQ community, and he got his hands on a weapon that facilitated mayhem, that made it possible to kill large numbers of people. And that has to stop. Over 90% of Americans support gun control. This doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. As a father and as someone who values life, I don't want to live in a society where I have to be constantly afraid to go into a club, to go into a church, to go to a university lecture, where I have to fear for my life. And please spare me the argument of arming other people or arming everyone, and then that will sort of cut down. We just got to arm ourselves out of this. I'm not going to respond. This is the argument of a 9-year-old. And my apologies to 9-year-olds. So instead of donating or subscribing or taking a voluntary subscription to this show, please donate to Casper Warden's effort. We'll link to it, collecting money for the victims. If you want to show your support that way, do it if you have some Linden dollars left over. Let's go to the show. A name I didn't mention earlier is Ben Lang, co-founder and executive editor of the Road to VR blog. I bumped into him on the show floor, and we immediately started talking about the importance of avatar representation and customization in virtual reality. I wanted to hear his take on it. I'm really glad he offered some deep thoughts.
I don't even think it's just avatar customization. I think it's anything where the user gets to make their own self, their own environment. I think it's the whole thing that Second Life tapped into, right? Yeah. And for a subset of people, it's a very, very powerful thing. This ability to not just have a character in a world. It's you in the world, right?
Yes.
That's the feeling that people who are
and that
deep
contributes to the
life.
sense of presence.
Yeah,
Everybody
exactly.
says, oh, sense of presence is basically, that's not what they're saying, but sometimes I feel they're saying, sense of presence is confined if I put it on and I can look behind me, boom, sense of presence checked. And I would say, no, there's so much more to it.
Yeah, no, so I think that what Second Life tapped into with that feeling that people have, the people that play it and are deep into it, they feel like they're in that world. They feel like they are part of it. I think that is a real thing, that VR, I think that's the thing that applies to everybody, but it's going to be more easily accessible for people through headsets. So I think the people who are deep into Second Life and those sorts of virtual worlds, they don't need the headset to have that feeling of being inside a space and having that space mean something important to them. Yeah. I think that with VR headsets going out there and people can become more easily immersed, I think that means a massively wider audience of people will now understand that exact same importance of, this is a virtual world. It's not just a game. It's a virtual space, and I'm inhabiting it, and the things that I'm doing here are important. So I think the VR headset is a tool to tap into what many Second Life players already understand about the importance of a real virtual space.
And don't get me wrong, I have moved on in my position just like Donald Trump has moved on. Some say, I say no, that I am not anti added immersion through all these wonderful things that are happening, tracking and such. It's merely, is the industry, that's the question, putting enough focus on this sort of identity exploration, or is it far and few in between? And the question is, if it is far and few in between, does that have to do with that somebody in the sort of money sphere of things figured out that there is no money in that? And that would surprise me, frankly, because I think the field is wide open for, let's say, a company that says, boom, we're going to have a camera array, or and in 1 minute you're in there. I remember last year was XX Array or some other company offered that service.
I think it's the exact opposite, actually. I think the money, what you're suggesting, that the people, kind of the stakeholders, don't think it's profitable. I think they don't understand that it will be yet. I think that we need to get more people inside of virtual worlds, and as those virtual worlds become important, where they are persistent places and people are doing things that are important there, it means that the player's avatar becomes more important to them, and that they will demand and want these abilities to represent themselves in that virtual space. I mean, imagine Facebook where you couldn't set your own profile picture, right?
Exactly.
It's like that's kind of like what a lot of these games are. The more and more social games become, I think the more and more people will realize that the avatar customization, and I almost hate that word, because when I say avatar customization, it's just, you're not talking about yourself anymore. You're talking about a mannequin.
That's right.
When I think about virtual reality, and
it's
I think
your
about
alter ego. It's your
when
digital
I think about myself in VR, it's me. I want to customize me in VR. It's not going to be my avatar. It's going to be me. I'm going to want to wear these boots. I'm going to want to wear this cape. I'm going to want to look like this in VR. Not, it's no longer this conversation of, oh, that's what my character looks like. It's like when I feel like I'm standing in there and I get to make customizations, I'm customizing me. And yeah, I think it is a matter of escaping a bit of the traditional game space, which a lot of VR is right now, because game studios and the game industry has the talent to create virtual spaces. But traditionally, those sorts of game studios, avatar customization is not a big deal for the traditional kind of gaming space.
That's why it's so interesting. That's why I said earlier, that's why I feel like maybe I'm getting old, where I feel like this is so important, because I see kids, they go like, okay, in this game, I don't know, I'm a green guy shooting things, and in this other game, I'm a guy in like flip-flops doing other things, and they don't have a problem hopping through these identities. And I always think like, hey, it would be so cool if I would remain that identity, and maybe I customize it towards like the aesthetic look of the game.
It's just you moving from one world to the next. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think the more that kind of the core of the VR space right now realizes how important social is, the more social becomes involved, the more that ability to customize and express yourself in VR through your character will come into focus.
Which brings me to already last question, maybe catch up tomorrow. Will Facebook social destroy everything else and will be face world?
That's a good question. I think
sheer market power, the
I think
pre-existing audiences.
I think that they are going to want a focused experience. You think about what Facebook is right now. We do specific things for it. I mean, we use it for specific things. We use it to communicate with people in a kind of text-based way. I use it personally to plan events with friends, but those events end up being held, elsewhere in real life. I think they're going to start...
I scream at people because of the internet disinhibition effect.
I think Facebook is going to start with a very focused, here's 3, 4, maybe 5 people and you can sit around and talk with each other sort of experience. They might take an early stab at, real money being involved in getting virtual items. We'll see. I don't feel like they are looking to make, a virtual world, a persistent MMO space.
Yeah, I think I disagree with you on that one, maybe.
Just in terms of what Facebook is now, Facebook is not about it's not about connecting with everyone. It's just connecting with the people that you know, presumably, or ostensibly.
That's what they told me in Allspace as well, which was very interesting. They said, I can invite people to, the Prince marathon party, but these are people that are already on my friends list. So you think Facebook is kind of in that field as well, so it's existing people.
Yeah, I don't think Facebook. I think whereas Second Life might be a platform where you meet people you never knew before.
Yeah.
I feel like Facebook is a platform that connects people that already have connections, and I think that place where they have started will focus what they end up doing in VR. 10 years out, sure, maybe 10, 15 years they want the big MMO-like space, but I think their early work will be smaller numbers of people, 5 people, chatting, sharing. I think sharing will be an important thing for them in terms of helping people share offline sorts of things, photos and videos with each other.
So that was Ben. Ben doesn't believe in Face World taking over the world and destroying Sansar and everything else. I still think that there might be a possibility. Global Face World dominance. Let's move right away to the next piece of audio from SVVR, speaking with Kirill Pukuti. He's the producer of Chernobyl 360, which is an interactive documentary. They had a successful Kickstarter campaign, and they're rolling this out in chunks of little clips. And he'll be talking about it's absolutely fascinating. You can download some stuff right now and view it on Google Cardboard. This is, of course, documenting the aftermath of the Chernobyl disaster, where the Chernobyl nuclear plant effectively blew up and contaminated this entire area, which was kind of a utopian, supposed to become sort of a utopian town. This was in April 26th. 1986. The town was called Pripyat. Well, it's still called Pripyat, and you can find it's a ghost town now. You can find a lot of creepy images online. There are still people living there, and Kirill went out there with a team and filmed them. You pop on the goggles and you see these women harvesting their own crops right next to the reactor. It's quite impactful. Great example of what 360 documentary can do. So here's Kirill explaining the concept of the rollout of the film and what they were filming while on location.
We are making it in episodes, which going to be released every 2 months. The first one is going to be released in 2 months about new safe confinement of Chernobyl station.
That's something I had no idea about, that they're building. What are they actually building there?
They're building the biggest moving construction in the world. It's the higher than Statue of Liberty, and in the wide it's like 2 stadiums. So it's very, very high technologically construction, and inside there is 2 cranes with robotic arms, which are going to cutting this part of nuclear power plant where there's still a lot of highly radioactive objects and even fuel of nuclear power plant.
So you go in there, I saw a bit where a woman, they still live there, very small community or a handful of people live there. And it's very powerful, but talk to me to people who are skeptical about 360 video in terms of documentary filmmaking, right? I talk to people sometimes, they say, yeah, it's a nice gimmick. Why is it more than a gimmick?
This is an empathical machine, as said Chris Milk, that when you inside this movie, you are near the people and you can feel them more closely, understand what they're feeling, what they see there. So I think the virtual reality and 360 video is very powerful, and we decided to use it for this documentary because we want to get attention of young generation to this topic. And now when there is not a lot of content, we think that young generation can get inside of this documentary and see what is really happening there, to know more about those people who live there, who works there, and also we have some interactivity to involve them more engagingly in this topic.
The camera is not moving much. I think that that's actually really great because I can look around. I watched a woman in the garden. Is that one of the things? Will we see less moving cameras, or what have you learned?
Actually, there is a lot of problems with filming. Actually, those cameras right now is not so good. Some of them is overheating.
Well, you have here, you can buy one for $60,000 from Nokia. It's not that great, though.
Yeah, I saw it, and of course it's an interesting technology, but not for this money yet. But also the GoPros, which are mostly everyone is using these days for filming, they also have a lot of problems like overheating. And actually, we was shooting in Chernobyl with drones. We were shooting like putting camera on the moving vehicles, or on cranes even. So it is very interesting to show and use the 360 video in different situations and to make it more in moving around. But of course it's still a problem because a lot of people have motion sickness, and it needs to be stabilized like mechanically, and also software need to be used for stabilization. Yeah, it's really complicated these days to shooting 360 videos, but
pioneering work.
There is a representative of Teta. He showed me some footages he made with Donald Trump. When yes, you can ask him.
I gotta go there. My God,
very looks.
Do you know that Donald Trump is in the Bay Area?
Yeah.
They have today and tomorrow. We should go there with the Rico Feta. Ask him about Chernobyl, what he would do,
and show maybe our documentary.
I will build a wall between Chernobyl and here. You mentioned it's interactive. What are the interactive components? One of the things people talk about when they talk about the future, go like, oh, would it be cool to combine 360 video and interactive virtual reality? So what do you mean? What are you adding there?
I'll show you a few examples of it. This is like a full screen mode. You can switch it to cardboard or full screen. So for example, this scene with drum monitoring of nuclear waste. So this is very primitive interactivity. This is like play pause from old games. Some of old games was also made with videos. So this is like still image. You're inside. But when you look on this trigger, the process starts and the door is opening. So you like controlling the full system, and it's alive. So it's not 3D. It's 360 video live. So you are switching mechanism and you're like scanning this drum. It's very simple mechanic. Play pause.
This is very cool.
Another one is like measuring radiation. when we was in Chernobyl, we was using dosimeter to measure radiation on different objects, and we made these mechanics when you need to find most radioactive objects and then take them and go like on factory of radioactive management. So here you have like this dosimeter. Yeah, you're looking around, and you see that some places are more radioactive than others. So it's like when you first object.
This is great.
Actually, we are going to be today on the high fidelity hackathon. We have photogrammetry of control room of reactor, and we want to add there some social capabilities. And try to maybe to experimenting what can be done on high fidelity these days, adding maybe some 360 videos, collectively watching them, something like this.
What's your personal connection to Chernobyl?
Actually, my father has been working there for more than 10 years, and the idea is to make something like tour to Chernobyl appeared 5 years ago. But that days I was thinking something about cave room, where projectors projecting on the walls, but it was very expensive that days and still expensive. Now we're thinking that our project need to be free, so we are making it for free. And we are making application for different platforms, even for Apple TV. So we have Apple TV version when you're using remote controls and a remote control of Apple TV, and you scrolling it around, watching 360 videos and with interactivity. So we decided to make as much as possible platforms for our documentary. So now this is also already available on Android market and Oculus Share. Next one is going to be Apple Store and Gear VR and Apple TVs. So, and next one, of course, is going to be, we want to get on HTC Vive and PlayStation, but this needs to be more rich 3D experience than just 360 video.
Right. So that was Kirill Pokuty. We're going to link to examples and to the page where you can download some clips, and it's fascinating because they also utilize, to make it more interactive, they use the photogrammetry, where you basically scan, you have footage from the real world, but you create a virtual replica, and then of course you have the ability to make it interactive, where you can walk around, which is one of the downsides of 360 video at this point, where you cannot combine easily virtual characters and footage from the physical world. Next piece of audio that I found in my vast collection of audio that came back from SVVR is Monica Joe. I bumped into her while I was signing my name on this big whiteboard wall of visitors to SVVR. She's the curator of the VR Museum. And they had some great items exhibited there. Old headsets, goofy-looking old headsets, heavy. But they also had on display some old magazines. And one particular magazine caught my attention, and that's how our conversation started.
And now here in this display is a magazine, VR World, magazine from 1995. Here comes the bride, world's first VR wedding. Amazing. And what does that have to do with you?
I was the bride/executive producer.
The executive producer of your own wedding.
Right. So it's like the ultimate bridezilla.
Yeah. What headsets did you use? Were they like 50 pounds heavy?
No, they were not 50 pounds, thank goodness. But they did. I had to wear them in lieu of a veil. I couldn't wear a veil because I wore an HMD instead, and they were borrowed from a defense contractor down in Carlsbad, California. I don't know if they exist. I don't think they exist anymore, but they're called Kaiser Electro-Optics, and they made HMDs for flight simulation, for training fighter pilots. And so we borrowed 3 of them, bride, groom, and minister HMDs. And
were you physically in different locations?
We were not. We were in the same location. The VR environment that was created for us was modeled after Plato's Atlantis, with some artistic license, of course. And pre-cataclysmic Atlantis bad luck to start off underwater.
And if you could describe the visual fidelity at the time, I mean, these are vectors, just blue and red, or how can I imagine the graphics at that time?
It was color and a lot of texture mapping. Our avatars, for instance, we asked the 3D modelers to model them after us. We could have been like our idealized selves or what have you, or something totally abstract, but we went with something more recognizable, especially because grandparents were going to be in the audience.
And how was that? It was projected outward. Family was sitting around in front of a screen, and they saw that was
like
happening.
Like a pretty large video wall as the camera point of view, and then 3 different other cameras for each of us who were immersed. So bridegroom and minister's point of view. So a separate monitor. Evidently, I made everybody sick in the audience because I moved my head around so much.
How long did the ceremony last? The reason I'm asking is we're still at a place where we now have relatively comfortable head-mounted displays, but still I would be hard-pressed to use them longer than, I don't know, maybe half hour or so.
Yeah, I would say pretty typical in terms of it wasn't like an extended ceremony, or I grew up Catholic, it wasn't a long Catholic marriage ceremony, for instance, thank goodness. And, we did an exchange of vows and stuff inside the virtual environment, but to cover ourselves, we also had a small, exchanging actual rings, physical rings, and there was a virtual kiss and a real kiss.
So when you exchanged the rings, obviously you couldn't see that in your head-mounted display.
The virtual rings?
Yeah. I mean, how would describe how that worked with the virtual rings?
Because we were about 12 feet apart, we stood in these pods that were outfitted with the Polhemus trackers, which was the magnetic trackers that were the standard back then. So it was, I'm sure it looked entirely goofy from the outside, extending our arms out to exchange rings. But obviously,
But the trackers describe the trackers. I'm not familiar with those trackers.
They just had them on certain points on a small platform that we stepped up to. And so they detected very simple kind of motion, head movement and some arm movements. But we didn't have a ton of time to develop the wedding software, so we had to go with something simple.
This is amazing. So you exchanged the rings and exchanged the physical ring at the same time?
No, we actually had to do that, when we stepped off of the pods, the VR pods, and somebody actually wrote a paper about gestures in cyberspace and what they may mean for the future. Could you actually use gestures like exchanging rings and make them stick as a legally binding thing?
That's
because
right.
in cyberspace, you're not signing or reading contracts, so gestures might play a really important role.
When you, sometimes we talk about on the podcast that people sort of suffer, not only when it comes to virtual reality, but in general, the problem in society arguably is that we kind of suffer from this collective amnesia, which is fueled by media that is so focused on the now that it kind of erases context. And you have you have a rich history with virtual reality. My friend Jackie Mori, they designed a scent collar back in the 90s, but now you've got all these kids running around. There's kids and there's little toys.
Get off my virtual lawn.
Yeah, right. And so how do you how should we teach them or let them know that there is a very rich history in all this kind of stuff?
I find
you're doing it. You're curating this museum here.
Right. That's one way.
That's one thing.
That's one way. I'm learning. I just started learning Unity. Probably one of the most popular, if not the most popular, game engines that you can create virtual environments in. And and I'm rubbing elbows with today's creators of content. And so I think just being in the midst of all of these new content developers and artists in VR today, and seeing them, come at it from different approaches really helps. And I think VR is in good hands.
Good.
I think there's a lot of leftover kind of I don't want to say resentment, but some people have said resentment or bitterness,
it's
from
kind of
from the past.
Right, right. And that is a dynamic that often happens in all sorts of different situations where people would say, we did it a certain way, and now you're kind of dismissing it, and you're not respecting the elders, that kind of thing. So that's very cool that you're jumping in with the youngsters, and you're not afraid. You're just doing this, and then you can actually infuse each other with the knowledge.
Yeah, I have a teenage son now. I'm still married to the same guy that I married in VR.
That's amazing.
So maybe that's the trick.
That's
right?
that's the thing.
That's the secret.
That's the secret to stay married. Is you hear it here first, kids.
Get married in VR. And so in my household, VR is now generational. And I was there to witness my son's first experience in VR, and watching that, like I said, it's like picking up where we left off, and they have different approaches. They look at things in a brand new way, and I love it. I think it's great.
Before we started recording, you told me something quite fascinating, and me as a Second Life documentarian, this is totally fascinating. I've explored a lot in my films the exploration of identity, and the people I interview say the same thing. They say, oh, I've known this person in Second Life forever, and then I meet them in real life and they look completely different, but immediately I know that this is this person because I feel I know that person, represented by the avatar, and although the physical appearance is sometimes completely different, there is no mismatch. It's the same person. The essence kind of shines through.
Right.
And you were saying, so tell me that story again. You had that idea of running around in Second Life until you find your husband?
Yeah, so I had wanted to do this kind of just a personal experiment, and my husband, he's great. He jumped right in and, just was along for the ride in VR, and he was ready to do the next experiment. And we were talking about almost like a scavenger hunt for your soulmate in Second Life. How I wanted to, I'll own the whole wacky thought. I wondered, like, if we didn't tell each other anything about our personas in Second Life, what our avatars look like and what have you, could we find each other?
That's an incredible experiment. But it's also logistically a nightmare. Second Life is huge.
A lot of people that I talked to about it discouraged the whole idea, and they said you're flirting with, this could be disastrous. You might get married in VR but get divorced in Second Life.
Second Life is the divorced engine.
Yeah.
Last question, are you not afraid of, you're also a parent, so am I, and I see both sides. I see the beauty and the potential and how it reverberates these experiences, and the getting closer together reverberates back into the physical world. But I can also see people completely just zoning out and say, forget about the physical world. That dystopian thing. Are you not concerned about that as the world is really going to shits, that a lot of people, the only way to cope with it is to escape?
Yeah, I think...
now with this technology, you can escape in such realism, or in such sort of all-encompassing power that wasn't possible before. Right.
I think that we'll always, as humans, will always have a need to escape.
Yeah.
We've been doing it ever since, ancient prehistoric times. But if my son is an indication of what the next generation might be, they're also awfully conscious of what's going on for the planet.
Yeah.
and to be connected with nature is something that's very important. My son is as much an avid video gamer as he is a conservationist.
That's amazing.
And so being connected to the planet and having appreciation draws him out of the house. You know, he's an intern for the Crissy Field Center, which is part of the Golden Gate National, the National Park Service. And so it's very balanced.
But he has good guidance. The balance comes from guidance. We live in a world where not every child has the privilege of having that type of guidance.
Yeah, but I think, it's easy enough.
I'm asking all these big social questions where I don't have an answer for.
It's easy enough to look around, and I think the message is, the drumbeat is getting louder that we need to do something about our planet. And so we can use VR to appreciate it, and maybe even, sadly, archive and document some of the things that we won't have in the future, but also maybe entice us to go back outside.
So that was Monica Jo. She has no problem chewing gum and walking at the same time, going outside and being inside. Not at the same time, but one after the other, and in a nice and balanced way. And next piece of audio, Timothy West, principal designer at Unity's Labs team. Is it labs? Is it plural? Not like Linden Lab, which is singular. And she is making world-building tools in VR. And the first thing that we had talked about in the past is the Editor VR, where that was demoed at the Vision Summit in LA, where they put the Unity UI into VR, and she was able to build in real time. Something that is a feature of the upcoming Project Sansar, as well as has been reported, and is possible to do in Unreal as well. I asked her what the challenges are when you port or design world building in virtual reality.
So if you've done VR design insofar as it is, if you've done any VR development as well, you know that actually the larger problems, it's not even really what it looks like so much as how it feels and how it works. So I would say much larger problems are, how do you rotate, and what button mappings do you use to rotate? How do you select objects at a distance, and when you do so, where does it go when you move your arm from A to B position? Because you're giving the computer an input when you go from one place to the other, but it doesn't necessarily know what to do with that information. You might be trying to move an object both, 15 degrees in one direction, but then also move it back 5 degrees, and figuring out how to do that both up close and at a distance is a significant challenge. When it's up close, it's actually much easier. We call that direct selection, or like short mode, basically. You can just pick up something and move it around. But when you're moving something that's much further away, that's when it gets really, really tricky. Actually, we'll talk about this in my talk later on today, but I think people have this sense of how it should work because they see telekinesis in movies and they're like, yeah, you just pick up an object and you move it where you want. Yeah, no, computers don't work like that. Unfortunately, you can't just.
Yeah, I tried that with high fidelity, and it's cool, but then it throws you off a little bit if it's not accurate, so it can really backfire.
Yeah, actually, their solution was fairly clever because they included the distance that your hand moves laterally away from your headset as part of how far the object moves, and have some easing on that, which I think is really clever. So we might try to steal from that a little bit, actually.
So you mentioned, you said world-building tool, and so we're here at SVVR. There is high fidelity, and then Linden Lab is just announced the beta for Project Sansar. But Unity is a game design tool. What is the difference?
What is the difference? Yeah, that's a very good question. I think a lot of it is analogous. Yeah. But I mean, obviously, if you're building stuff in Unity, you can build the tools on which things like high fidelity can be built. So you're doing more of the base level stuff. So I said world building. That's sort of thinking big, but on a basic level, it's things like level editing and scene creation. So if you're doing cinematic VR, something like Editor VR means that you can do set dressing the way you can in the theater, right? Or if you're an interior designer. So you don't necessarily need to, be working in 2D, 3D, which is a much more difficult thing that takes like years to learn, hundreds of man hours to even master the tools. So there's other things that we want to do with Editor VR. I mean, the goal is just to get you taking off the headset less. So obviously, you'll be able to do scripting, you'll be able to edit components and so on.
Sorry, that sounds so dystopian. We're working very hard to make you take off the headset less and get distracted by reality. Great job, great goal.
I mean, okay, if Valve could like come out like with sensors that I could just stick on everything, including my cat and my coffee mug and my keyboard. Look, I'm just saying my job would be easier. That's all. But you know, okay.
So you never go out in the canyons or walk and smell the flowers, or is that the deal?
No, I love being outside. Actually, one thing I do love is if I go home and I play a game, I'm not just sitting on the couch, right, anymore. But if I'm at work and I'm working, I can be standing up and I can be moving around for my job, which honestly is not something computer professionals have been able to do since the advent of digital desktop computers, you know?
That's the best selling point. So what you're actually working on is to make computer professionals and other people actually do get up more often and exercise those good old muscles.
Yeah, actually, I tried out the I forget
the Infinideck. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried out the Infinideck, and afterwards I was saying, you know, I want to just
That's
like
a good
run.
workout.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It's a great workout, and if
I was
it means
there 5 minutes yesterday. I'm still sore. I woke up this morning. Yeah.
Look, you played like Skyrim, for example,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you look and your avatar is running all over the place like a madman. Has it ever occurred to you that if you ran half as much as your avatar, you'd be pretty fit? Because it has to me.
There was a story on NPR one time a year ago where they did a study that when your avatar in Second Life eats sugar and sweets, then the craving for these sweets in real life is less. The mirror neurons then trick you into believing that you actually ate them.
Have you read about mirror therapy? People with phantom limb syndrome can use a
Yeah, I read
mirror
a little bit
that
about
helps alleviate their symptoms because temporarily their brain thinks they have another hand and they can just scratch that itch or whatever it is that's bothering them.
Yeah.
Like it's not well documented. I've seen things recently that said it's not as effective as they first thought. But the fact that this is a possibility means that in VR we can take this like way further, right?
Yeah.
Or in AR actually even better. So,
Okay, world versus game.
Just to add to that, I mean, obviously with VR, people are using Unity to make not just games. They're using them to make applications. They're using them to make cinematic experiences. So in that sense, VR is an open playing field for Unity.
And then also what appeals to me personally, the virtual world as an exploration space where I'm not pressured to have to do certain tasks. And that's a subset of the population that enjoys that. I happen to be one of them. Now what you demoed is so transformative, and Unreal has since done the same. And since this is coming out on my podcast after, Ebbe will give their presentation. Ebbe will show, Ebbe from Linden Lab will show that Project Sansar has similar capabilities. It almost seems that the era of sitting there and basically punching in numbers where to place objects in the space is almost over. I mean, how do you see this? It's a very intuitive way to build.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Unity's core tenet has always been the democratization of game design, and I don't know if anyone ever thought that VR would really be the linchpin for that, but it's there, right? Like
democratization to include people who don't have an advanced math degree.
Advanced math degree, or like the ability to use Maya, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, these are. I don't think these jobs are going away. By the way, people who make movies, people who make these beautiful experiences, they're artists and they're masters of their craft. But if I just want to make a 3D world right now, it is so much more difficult to do using 2D, 3D than just to go in virtual reality. For a long time, most of humanity couldn't read. Most of humanity wasn't literate. And as a result of now most of humanity being literate, we have silly blog posts all the time. But the fact is there are people in this world who have written the most wonderful books that in previous centuries would have never learned how to read. I think the same is true for musicians. I think the same will be true for games. And the same will be true for these amazing worlds we're going to create in VR.
Right. And my friend from Berlin, Werner, would now say, I can't make any industrial image videos anymore because the CEO says my son can shoot this on an iPhone 6. Why do I need to hire you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think there will always be people who have that level of craftsmanship and have that level of skill, and I don't think their jobs will go away. I mean, I think
How do we get on this now?
No, it's interesting though. I mean, the same for web and mobile design.
Changing.
You can just download a template. You don't need to have a custom site, for example, right? So I think this is true of a lot of domains, but I mean, I guess it depends on how much money you have, how specialized your needs are, and how much do you value the creation of the people you want to hire.
That was Timony West. We're linking to the NPR study about sugar and avatars and Second Life. And also linking to Infinadeck. I still have audio from these guys. The Infinadeck is very interesting. It's a little bulky, as Joe and I have been talking about in the past, but tremendous potential. I'm not going to put one in the basement quite yet, though. The last piece of audio for today, Gunter, from Gunter's Universe. His full name is Gunter S. Thompson. You may have heard a similar name before. He's a talk show host in VR chat of Gunter's Universe. And I will be guest on, when is it, July 12th. Yes, yours truly will talk about things in VR chat. And it was great to bump into Gunter because, admittedly, Joe and I have been maybe dissing the VR chat efforts a little bit with very little knowledge because we both haven't been in there. VR chat is actually kind of a solid social VR space that is really not just paint by numbers. There's a fair amount of creativity in there, and Gunter is doing a great job, and I'm looking forward to going on his show. As you might imagine, when I bumped into him at SVVR, I asked him the most obvious question first.
Did you ever get contacted by the Hunter S. Thompson estate and say, we're going to let this one slide?
Hunter's not alive anymore, but he does have a son that's involved with some sort of tech, so I want to reach out to him and be like, come on my show or come hang out.
I'm really impressed with VR chat, and I feel like I'm one of those guys who doesn't see a movie but then goes like, this movie sucks. So I wasn't even aware that you could do all this stuff in VR chat. You can actually manipulate the environment. You can build your own environment. I literally thought this is a pick and choose of 5 different preset rooms, and that's it.
Right. No, it's nothing like that. There's some other social VR applications that they're curating their rooms, and you can use their rooms to connect and hang out with people. But what we love about VR chat is handing the power to the community, allowing them to use. There's kind of 2 ways. If you want to learn Unity, it's a great time to learn Unity because you don't need to program or anything like that. You can just put together an environment, use some assets off the asset store, and put something together and bring it to VR chat and share it with people. We'll give you feedback, or we'll just run around and have fun. Same thing with the avatars. That's all made by the community.
That's right. You can create avatars to an extent, whatever your capabilities are. Right. And you're not confined.
There's a lot of people that think that since you can't track the rest of it very easily, that we should just be showing what's tracked. I would say there's more of a majority in these social VR spaces, or just people that are building apps, or games. They seem to only show that. So, okay, that's fine, but no, I want to be an avatar, especially because I'm hanging out with other people. Floating hands and head, that's just not going to work for me. So there's a little awkward, with the inverse kinematics, so like your shoulders don't, and your elbows look kind of weird, but that's getting better. But you could be like a dragon or whatever. You could be not even humanoid.
What is the show about, or how does it work? A VR talk show?
What's a VR talk show. I don't know. It's basically.
Explain to my mom.
Sure. So we like watching talk shows on TV, but imagine if you could go to that talk show and be in the audience. That's super cool. And you can do that if you go to LA, and then you could be on the Jimmy Fallon show, or maybe that one's New York. But you're going to got to go there, and you got to get your tickets in advance. This is, if you have a VR headset, log in anytime, well, not anytime, log in Tuesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, and join us in the crowd. There's 30, 40, 50 people sitting in the audience seating. I bring on developers, or even people that are in entertainment. We've got people like The Void, or even like Duncan Trussell, who does a big podcast, or just tons of developers that are making all this great content. We have big screens there, so we show their sizzle reels, their trailers, and what I really love is after the show ends, all the people in the audience, they get to ask the questions, come hang out. Maybe we'll go to other VR chat rooms. They throw down a portal to go to some of the community rooms, and then keep blowing the guests' mind because they love being on the talk show. They love seeing all this and going to other rooms.
What's the production logistics? I mean, if you pipe in, how elaborate is this? If you pipe, like, if a guest brings in like a reel or something, okay, then you have to fire off that reel. I mean, you need to have a couple of people running cameras or running the other stuff.
Yes. So right behind us is
Here's Kenneth.
Hey,
how's it going?
Hey.
He does cam.
Yes.
You do the cameras?
Yeah. Yes. So we actually have a whole system where we can actually switch the views. We can like pan in. We can float around go around the whole table, get reactions from the audience. Look at the screen when we're showing content. and so we can do on-the-fly editing.
That's
right
awesome.
there.
And he's basically streaming his view, but his view is he basically leaves his avatar body and becomes camera by pressing buttons on that we've assigned to it after we've developed that. And so it's a stream, then it's made into a YouTube version that goes up on YouTube. You just go to guntersuniverse.com to find all that stuff.
Do you stream it live to YouTube at the same time?
I streamed to Twitch live, and then I pushed that over to YouTube. There were some issues with streaming on YouTube where other people in other countries couldn't get to it.
So, but you do it live, which I think is awesome. Are you concerned, or has it ever happened? People going nuts, trolling, live trolling, taking over the show, running onto the stage saying, you guys suck.
You know, just a little bit.
9/11 was an inside job. So
nothing
like
that extreme. You know, sometimes there's been somebody been rude. Usually if I ask them, hey, this is a live talk show, if you could please, have a seat, they do. Sometimes it's just people not knowing how to use the controls and they stumbled into this. And so we just show them what's up. So the show can get interrupted, but I only think we've had like one troll or something like that. They got bored.
We've had people come in and be like, hey, how's it going? So has the show started yet? And we're like, yeah, actually, as a matter of fact, it is. So it's going right now.
To the show.
Yeah. A lot of Second Life people will have complete, I know what you're talking about. We have people piling on top of the host because the landing point happened to be on stage and stuff like that.
Yep.
And right now I don't have that protection, but there's plenty of ideas to design things in a way that barriers could stop people from coming up on the table and stuff like that. But so far what's great about the VR chat community is everybody's super nice. People that buy VR headsets usually have to have a little bit of money, and they're probably mature because having to spend all that.
That's a good point. Yeah. So it's easier to troll in other more sort of low barrier places where the barrier of entry is lower.
Right.
So here you actually got to make an effort to go in.
Right.
So you got to be a really dedicated troll.
Yes.
If you want to spend I'm going to spend $800 on an HTC Vive just to troll Gunter.
It's the most expensive practical joke ever.
Good point.
So yeah, it's great. Just to reiterate what he was saying, with VR chat, it's basically a core community of developers, artists, creative types, enthusiasts. So people that really want to be there and actually discuss this whole industry and just bounce ideas off each other. We've done collaboration. We did a Ludum Dare, and actually one of the guys that did it is here. We worked together.
Nicholas Binge?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes. And so we collaborated together. I did a model train, I did a small little piece. And these guys actually used, voice communication. And so to, talk about what they want to do. And they'd upload the room. They're like, hey, go in now, check it out. We didn't have to sit there and do any compiling and then send it out to people, have them check it and give us feedback. They could literally jump in the room, check it out as it's developing. They could do rapid iterations. So that was a really great real world experience of the social VR space for collaborative efforts.
Do you have live musical artists? Or are you planning on that?
Planning. We do have some people that play the saxophone or some electronic stuff, and want to do an open mic night. So they're kind of we're wanting that to happen. Our audio isn't the best, but we still have a blast. We do karaoke nights. That's some of our favorites, just to put up YouTube karaoke videos and just have a blast with it. We like to party.
Last question on the live streaming. You guys talk. Okay, let me ask you this.
I was just going to add, we're making the audio better right now.
Good.
Yeah,
good. Very good. Here's the audio guy from VR Chat saying it's just it's going to get a lot better by next Monday, I hope, or Tuesday.
There might be some recovery time.
Wednesday. Oh, okay, good. I'll give you that.
All right, and that was Gunter from Gunter's Universe. Again, take down the date of July 12th, where I'll be guest in Gunter's Universe. This is the end of the show. We have tons of links for you. We have tomorrow, starting the press preview. Tomorrow, Saturday, if you're listening to this on Friday when it comes out. Saturday's press preview of Second Life 13th birthday celebration. Huge. And the doors open officially on the 19th. So come on by and see the creativity of Second Life residents. It's just always totally amazing. On the 18th, of course, also is Virtual Abilities Mental Health Symposium with guests, professionals talking about all sorts of mental health related issues, treatment, poetry and mental health. evaluating mental capacity of seniors, herbal medicine. Avalon Burke, aka Tammy Fletcher, licensed family marriage therapist, will speak also about her experience of counseling avatars. They have problems too. So that's happening. And again, please donate to the Orlando victims if you have a few $1 lying around. And more importantly, even call your senators and tell them to stop taking money from the NRA. And don't forget the live show next Friday, the 24th, 1 p.m. in Second Life at SL13B. You will find us. Come on down. Great show. 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Have a great weekend and bye.
The Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley is a weekly production of Basic Drax Entertainment. The show is supported by SL Artist, Warbug, 01 Heavy Industries Corporation, Extraordinary Fine Magical Goods, Ionic, Maven Homes, Giza Creations, Botanical, Strawberry Sing, Abranimations, Eros Avatars, Cube Republic, What Next, Dutchy Furniture, Landscapes Unlimited, Bay Cities You Know for Kids, Fallen Gods Incorporated, Feroce SL, and Death Row Designs. Contact the show via Skype, Drax Files, Avatar Drax Files, or email radio@draxfiles.com.